Hey guys, it's Villain Theory, and to everyone's surprise, Fantasy Flight Games have just revealed 2 new cards very randomly on this Monday afternoon. Huge shoutouts to Kruno, friend of the channel, who pointed this out to me. I had no idea this happened, and here we are. Now, hopefully you've seen the Daredevil article, hopefully you've seen my last couple of videos on Daredevil, but he comes in with the Sense deck, and I've talked a lot about the Sense deck, and it's very, very strong. Now, the new cards we have are a 1-cost upgrade and a 2-cost event. The upgrade is Daredevil's Billy Club. It's restricted, and Daredevil gets +1 attack. If this card stops there, no more text. This is a good card. A 1-cost upgrade for +1 attack is really nice, especially because Daredevil has some ways to ready in his kit. But then it says hero action, return this card to your hand from play and choose. Either deal 1 damage to an enemy, or Daredevil gains the aerial trait until the end of the round. Now, Daredevil getting the aerial trait probably surprises a lot of people, but we actually have a precedent for this with Silk and Spider-Ham, who have the organic webbing card, which lets them swing around, which gets them the aerial trait. Daredevil can swing around on his billy clubs. And not everyone knows this, but Daredevil was inspired by Spider-Man. They both wear red, swing around New York, and make quips as they fight the bad guys, although Daredevil ended up taking a bit of a darker tone overall. But he also swings around the city, so this makes a lot of sense that all the kind of, somewhat more recent web swinging cards end up giving the aerial trait, so can this. And it kind of combos with Raising Hell, the 2-cost event. It's a hero action, deal 2 damage to each enemy for each upgrade attached to the enemy, 3 damage instead if Daredevil has the aerial trait. We're going to come back to this and what all of the upgrades and things you can get onto enemies are. We're going to calculate some damage, but you get the aerial trait through the billy clubs, and that's how they combo. So let's look at that Billy Club, and just that +1 attack is so good. With that Man Without Fear upgrade that Daredevil has, now he can attack for free for a second time if he has a Billy Club out, and we also have Acute Tactility, one of the Sense upgrade cards. He can potentially play this every single turn, and it readies him up after defeating an enemy or scheme. Obviously with the attack boost here, we're talking more about minions, but with minions, it's so good. Acute Tactility is already basically Valkyrie's Deathglow. Attach it to a target, knock that target out, ready up. Same cost, it all works out the same maths kind of thing, but Daredevil has lower attack than Valkyrie could typically get. But now the Billy Club, being a +1 attack, closes the gap pretty significantly. Valkyrie with Dragon Fang is going to have more attack with, the same kind of cost of upgrade out, but that's kind of her thing. Daredevil is so well-rounded, he's not going to have anywhere near the weaknesses she has, and with more and more stat boosts coming up in the aspects, like the innate reflexes for protection, we think there's going to be an aggression one of these cards. If you haven't seen my video on starting upgrades, definitely check that out. But basically, however many minions you have out, there's going to be a very good chance that you can just kind of whack them all, ready up, knock one out, knock the next one out, knock the next one out. If you keep on paying for Acute Tactility and you have the attack stat boosts, or even Radar Sense to boost up the damage, that's another Sense upgrade attachment. I should note that the only way to keep on replaying the same upgrade, in this case Acute Tactility, is if all your other Sense upgrades are already out, probably played on the previous turn, or maybe the same turn if you've got a lot of resources. So the attack boost from Daredevil's Billy Club is really good. But then we have the hero action, and returning this card to your hand, you're probably going to want to play it again unless it's the final turn of the game maybe. So it kind of costs you a resource to do that. You return it to hand, but you then have to pay to put it back in play. And 1 resource for 1 damage, which is the first option, isn't that impressive, but it is a nice thing to sink your resources into if you really need some damage and you didn't have a better way to do it with your, Sense upgrades, things like that. If there was that minion that was really bad and you just needed to spend 1, maybe 2 more resources to finish it off, this is a way you could do it if you couldn't math it out in a better way. You could also, on the final turn, sink a bunch of resources into this. But I think its main use is going to be for enemies with toughness, or just they get a tough through some other means, a tough status card. This is a super cheap way to pop that tough. Use an action, bring it back to your hand, get that damage, knock off the tough, then just for 1 resource, play it again. It's effectively 1 resource to remove a tough status card. It doesn't get much more efficient than that. I also wanted to point out that the hero action isn't an attack, even though it boosts its attack stat when it's passively in play, which I think is funny. So the hero action will bypass things like Retaliate and Stun. Also, as another bonus, the precision damage from Billy Club is going to help you set up some of the martial artist stuff they have teased is coming up. We have stealth training in Justice, where if you remove the exact amount of threat from a side scheme, you get a stun. They have teased some more stuff like this is coming up as kind of a theme of martial artist, and that just makes Billy Club even better. One very minor use of this card that is kind of interesting is that because you can return it to your hand, If you ever really need a physical resource, maybe to pay for an attack card that, needs physicals, or remove a really bad attachment from the villain and you didn't have any other way, you could technically do this, but I think this is kind of a minor point. But if it makes a difference, it's just kind of a little thing to keep in mind. But really, we need to talk about going aerial. Now, obviously, this combos with the Raising Hell event we've seen. Outside of that, I don't know if it's worth building Daredevil with aerial cards. Now, Daredevil doesn't start aerial. Normally, if you don't start aerial, it means that every aerial event in your deck is kind of useless until you find that upgrade that lets you go aerial. Daredevil, however, with his giant sense deck, 5 cards, if you have an aerial event in hand but aren't aerial, you can just spend them on the sense deck. It's a perfect resource sink. You can build really risky with high returns with him, and that kind of checks out here. However, you lose +1 attack to become aerial, and then you have to replay the Billy Club. And I don't know that a lot of aerial cards, although they are good, I don't know that a lot of them are worth more than, an extra resource to set up for that round. However, Dive Bomb and Hone Technique definitely are, especially in multiplayer. So Daredevil Hone Technique Dive Bomb is totally legitimately possible, which is not something I thought I'd be talking about today. And then we come back to Raising Hell, and for each upgrade on an enemy, it deals 2 damage, 3 if Daredevil is aerial. And now if you have 2 or more attachments out on an enemy that you particularly want to damage, now going aerial is worth it that way. So Billy Club, if you have 2 attachments out when you would use Raising Hell, I think it is worth using his Billy Club to go aerial at that point. If you have 3 or 4 out, it's a no-brainer. Get that extra damage, as long as it matters, because if you have these upgrades on a 2 HP minion, you definitely don't need 3 damage and so on. But in general, there are going to be times where Raising Hell makes bringing the Billy Club back to hand worth it to go aerial, even if you don't have any other aerial stuff. Now, to talk more about Raising Hell, this is kind of a combo attack card, and some people in my comments have mentioned, putting out these attachments is kind of setting things up for the Billy Club, and it turns out you were right. I don't know if you're secret playtesters or just a really good guess, probably just the latter. I think it was just kind of like talking about theme, and the theme here really kind of works with Raising Hell. I think that's really fun. You can put sense upgrades on potentially, 4 different enemies, and then hit all of them with the damage from Raising Hell, or you can stack up upgrades in the same place and do 1 mega swinging web kick style damage burst. This card most reminds me of Port and Punch from Nightcrawler. Daredevil has way more upgrades available per turn than Nightcrawler, but Nightcrawler's Port and Punch automatically does 3 damage without needing an upgrade to be anywhere. But I thought they were very, very similar, so wanted to point that out. Now, Raising Hell will normally be able to have 4 upgrades available on enemies, at least if you can afford them, because Daredevil will always have these available in his sense deck that he could play every turn. If you have all 4 out, Raising Hell potentially does 8 damage, if you're aerial, potentially 12 damage. Those are pretty good numbers. I think kind of the downside here would be if you're putting upgrades somewhere just to get the damage, but the benefit isn't really doing much. I think for ending games with Daredevil, throwing all 4 of these on the villain, which is where you want to put Heightened Hearing all the time, that's the defensive upgrade. Go aerial and get like 12 damage out of this, just why not? Just Daredevil things, he's got no super strength or anything, but he is an absolute titan as far as card game damage is concerned. He's hitting really hard. And if you need to clear out minions, you can spread these out. You definitely want the smell upgrade and the touch upgrade on a minion if you have the choice, because you're going to defeat them and then get the benefits, whereas you might not defeat the villain. But yeah, I think this is a pretty good card. He's only got 1 copy, which I think is the right amount, because it is somewhat situational, particularly when his other attack events and, radar sense and his +1 attack from Billy Club, he does have ways to do damage. And for me personally, I think I need 3 upgrades out in good and useful places to make Raising Hell worth playing. 2 is okay, but I'm definitely trying to get 3 out minimum. But let's just talk about deck building and multiplayer for a second here, because you can get upgrades to attach to enemies from deck building. They're in aggression, they're in justice. I mean, technically they're in every aspect. And if that card already does something good, and then you raise hell with this event, you're getting extra damage from this card and whatever benefit the attachment did, such as Suppressing Fire, which is an aggression upgrade you can attach to enemies that I looked at in my previous video that heals you for 2 if you defeat the enemy. So the combo potential gets a lot bigger. But then let's go to multiplayer. And a lot of people called out Cyclops for working with Daredevil before, but I automatically went to Iceman. And both of these characters are going to be really good with Raising Hell, because they both have multiple attachments they can put out there that are going to increase its damage. Taking Iceman, for example, we can do something like this. We could have all 5 Frostbites on, let's say, the villain, and then all 4 of Daredevil's sense upgrades on the villain. Now, it's not just automatic, it's not free. to get 5 Frostbites in one place. You have to work toward it, maybe stun the villain, do it across a couple of turns. But let's just theoretically say we've done this. Now, with 5 Frostbites and 4 Sense upgrades, Raising Hell is doing 27 damage, plus the 3 damage from Radar Sense for 30 damage. That is one heck of a combo for a guy with no super strength. And what I really liked about this was maybe taking it to 3 player and including Rogue. Touched is another upgrade, and Superpower Adaptation will let you potentially play Raising Hell multiple times per deck pass. Obviously the villain's health scales up, but I thought this was really fun. You know, there's a few big question marks there, but I think just the fact that it's possible is really fun to consider. Overall, I think both of these are really good cards. Raising Hell has big combo potential, but me, I love my consistency. Billy Club getting +1 attack every turn, great, nice passive upgrade, but oh, I can ping off Tufts or get around Retaliate and stuns in certain ways. And if I want to go Hone Technique Dive Bomb, I mean, I guess that's an option as well now. The Billy Club, just a +1 attack, is going to make readying builds on Daredevil even better. Honestly, this card is so good, I might just run Lock and Load because it's a weapon traded thing. So, you know, that's the 0 cost side scheme and aggression, 2 threat per person, defeat it, get yourself a weapon in play. Taking a quick look at all of Daredevil's cards now, it's kind of looking like this, with the new cards both found on the right hand side here. We're missing card number 11, card number 13, and because of the position of number 8, Raising Hell, we now know he has 2 copies of Living Lie Detector. You can see that on the left hand side. So he's got 7 events in total, 3 attack events, and 4 threat removal events, which is very unusual. I can't think of another hero who has 4. I mean, Vision technically has 5, but definitely between these 4 threat removal events and Foggy Nelson. And also he's got the Superior Taste Sense upgrade, also known as the Licking upgrade, to remove threat 2. So the threat removal and damage here is looking pretty good. Then next up we have those Justice cards. We have Cloak and Dagger. Not only did they help me get to Master rank in Marvel Rivals, they are teleporting into Marvel Champions as part of Daredevil's pre-constructed deck, the aspect cards he comes with. And this design is crazy. Like, the new Justice cards, in the nicest way, I think the old design team didn't know what to do with Justice after they added a certain level of threat removal, and then Tony came in as lead designer, and we got stuff like Float Like a Butterfly, and we got the Raft, and now in addition to the cool stuff they already showed in a Daredevil preview, we have 2 of the most unique allies in the game. Both of these are free cost allies, but you'd never want to really pay for Dagger the normal way if you can help it. Cloak is free cost with 2 threat removal, 1 attack, 2 hit points. It's not very impressive for the stats until you realize he doesn't take consequential damage. But then things take a dip again as we look at the bottom and see an acceleration icon. But then things get unbelievably good when we see his action. So this is kind of a roller coaster of a card to look at. There is a lot to take in. No consequential damage, acceleration icon, and really good action that's going to be available every turn. That action is to exhaust Cloak and spend 2 energy resources, find Dagger, and put her into play. Over on Dagger, she's got 1 fort, 2 attack, which is the reverse, but she takes consequential damage. In fact, she takes 2 points of consequential damage each time. But when Dagger is in play, Cloak loses each acceleration icon. And if Cloak is in play, she takes -1 consequential damage, so basically just the regular 1 that most allies take for doing something. If Cloak is in play, and you had better hope he is, or you probably don't play Dagger unless you're really desperate. You know, the maths actually isn't that bad because allies are just good. But anyway, if Cloak is in play, Dagger removes an acceleration icon. That makes Cloak really good. A free cost, no consequential damage, 2/4 ally that can just keep on forwarding every turn, potentially, as long as Dagger hangs around. And if Cloak is in play, Dagger goes back to normal consequential damage, which makes her a pretty decent value ally. Not super good for free cost, but really, really good for an action that only makes you spend 2 resources. Now, the action on Cloak does require energies, which is going to be not always possible for every character to always produce, but most characters in the game do have some kind of resource generator. And the ones who do not have many energies available in any easy way probably just don't take these allies. So looking at all of this, if we play Cloak and use his action, he will be exhausted the first turn, but next turn, because Dagger is there, he's just going to be able to fort for 2 with no consequences, and potentially do that for the rest of the game if you keep Dagger around. But let's look at Dagger, assuming she came in play through Cloak's ability, 2 effective resources for what is basically in stats going to be equivalent to Angel for the X-Men, who is 2 costs basically if you're an X-Men hero, but he's much better than the average 2 cost. So Dagger is much better than the average 2 cost, but she's equivalent to a 1-cost card, not a 2-cost. 2 effective resources. If you're not familiar with these terms, it might be a bit complicated, but basically, Dagger is really, really cheap for what you get. You could use her to attack one turn, then the next turn, then keep her around, and then just keep on forwarding with Cloak, and you've got a great deal. Or you can attack twice with Dagger across 2 rounds, then block a villain attack, then have Cloak summon her again. The timing there bypasses the acceleration icon doing anything bad on Cloak, because by the time you're blocking with Dagger, threat has already been added to the main scheme. It's a really nice little loop. Cloak is a no consequential damage ally who can basically summon an infinite chump blocking, attack blocking other ally for you, but you could just use them for damage and then keep them around. You could even just use them entirely for damage and resummon them if you don't need to block with allies. Some scenarios punish that. The flexibility and potential here is really, really high. The big downside is playing Cloak, then using the action all on one turn. Basically uses up your entire turn, and at that point, Dagger's attacked for 2, and that's all you've got because you have to exhaust Cloak. So there's a big tempo hit here, and it might take quite a few rounds for it to really pay off. But then it can really pay off. Cloak also kind of functions like a resource sink. So if you're someone like Black Panther T'Challa with those Vibranium double resources, or Bishop, there's actually 5 or 6 characters I think that might really like Cloak just as a resource sink. Captain Marvel, even Iron Man could do this. They all have a lot of energies, and sometimes they have too many energies. So this is really, really useful. But just on anyone in general, I think it has potential. The only other time we've seen allies do anything kind of like this is Phantom X, which after you play him, you go ahead and find Eva, who has to be in your deck. But it's not 2 allies, and it's a response for Phantom X, and then Eva's just in the game forever, basically. But I believe this was also one of Tony's designs, so it's very cool to see this kind of thing coming back. If Cloak and Dagger had been on the same card, I don't think it would have done them justice. Because they are both individual, humans, people. I think they deserve their own cards. So this was a really cool way to do it. For Cloak in particular, I want to talk about multiplayer, or if you're Spider-Woman, just multi-aspect deck building shenanigans, because you could bring Inspired and then some readies for Cloak, and you don't even need to bring Dagger necessarily, although you could just do that anyway. But his lack of consequential damage means if you buff his stats and then ready him up, you get an absolutely absurd amount of threat removal value. I also want to point out that Cloak's acceleration icon is very unique, and it makes me think of the recently revealed Daredevil team-up card, Dance with the Devil, which has an Amplify icon. One seems to be geared toward Elektra, so I wonder if they're setting up some aspect cards that reward bad icons, a bit like the Pool aspect, but bring it to other aspects now. On one hand, I think this kind of hurts a unique thing that Pool could do, but it does help Pool in multiplayer, and I think the whole Pool aspect in Deadpool is no longer in the current environment, so I guess these ideas are up for grabs. I actually think in general, using these bad icons on player cards and players benefiting from them in different ways, very underexplored, even with the Pool aspect, so I'm actually happy to see this design space being used more and again. Overall, I really like these allies. I think the amount of time it takes to pay off makes them relatively balanced, although I do think this is very strong, very high potential, and very, very consistent because you can just keep resummoning Dagger. So again, thank you to Con of Heroes for sharing those. Looking forward to the panel. I will be sharing it in a community post on my channel, so you can subscribe if you want to see it, but also make sure you subscribe to the MCM guys. I hope you're looking forward to more reveals. I hope you enjoyed these crazy Daredevil cards, and I'll see you in the next video.